your old pal said, son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
The bell calls us together in covenant, to share, to reflect, to hear with open hearts. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in formerly Lenape territory, White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Brenneman, Community UU religious educator.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, CUUC music director.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which upholds four truths.
It's a blessing you were born.
It matters what you do.
Your experience of the divine is true.
And you don't have to go it alone.
So thank you for being here. It's good to be together. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
It is the Sunday at the end of the fifth full week of spring. The days continue to lengthen, and today we're up to 13 hours, 47 minutes of daylight. The waxing gibbous moon will be full tomorrow night. It's called the pink moon, named after the pink phlox blossoms that bloom this time of year.
Today is the 13th day of Ramadan, which continues until sundown on May 12th. Ramadan Mubarak.
And a special welcome to our visitors. If you are a first-time visitor, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You will find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. There you will also find other resources to help keep us connected during this time, and a donate button. For April, our Share the Plate funds go to the Westchester Community College Foundation Student Emergency Fund. We are able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, for the plate share, and for the minister's discretionary fund.
And now, Board Chair Joe Majak has a Zoom tip for you, and then will lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board for this congregation, I welcome you. In a moment, I'm going to deliver a helpful Zoom tip. It's for those of you who don't care for the distraction of chat previews popping up on your screen during Sunday service. Do you want to say goodbye to those pop-ups? When using the chat feature during Sunday service, I would like to ask everyone to please be considerate of other folks who prefer less screen noise. Yes, I know it's called chat for a reason. You've got me there. Okay. Now that I've stalled long enough for you to grab a writing instrument, here is the Zoom tip. Please try this. No guarantees. Go to Zoom settings. That's Zoom settings. Click on the chat menu button. Go to push notifications and click on the option marked nothing. Continue to scroll down the chat section and click off the play sound when I receive a new message option. Lastly, and most importantly, click off the show message preview button. There you go. And now it's time to light the chalice. On the Sunday at the end of the fifth full week of spring, we dedicate our chalice to the fifth principle of our faith, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from the Passover Haggadah. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of Freedom.
What happened in England in 1615? John Biddle was born, known as the father of English Unitarianism. Queen Elizabeth's 45-year reign had ended a dozen years before. She was succeeded by King James. The ground of Unitarianism had been laid by four key influences. One, the Bible in English translation. 230 years before Biddle's birth, John Wycliffe produced the first English translation of the Bible. The slow seeping influence of English translation Bibles bolstered the idea that the only authoritative, reliable guide to doctrine was the Bible itself. And thus the doctrinal matters not specifically dictated in the Bible, such as the Trinity, the precise nature of the communion, bread and wine, infant versus adult baptism, ought not to be subject to persecution, but rather diverse persuasion should be tolerated. 2. Influx of Anabaptists and other Protestants. 80 years before Biddle's birth, Henry VIII made himself head of the Church of England, a break from papal authority that led to this influx. 3. The stranger churches. Begun 65 years before Biddle's birth, stranger churches grew to 5,000 members with branches in 11 towns propagating ideas of Italian humanists. 4. Socinian books and tracts, despite attempts to ban them, had been circulating underground, urging reason in religion and tolerance of diversity. Into this context, John Biddle was born, grew up, became a scholar, convinced through his study of Scripture that the doctrine of the Trinity was not supported. For this heresy, he was repeatedly imprisoned, and when he wasn't, spent years under house arrest, during which time he worked on his theological manuscripts and English translations of Fausto Sozzini works. Imprisoned again in 1652, then released by the Oliver Cromwell government, Biddle and his adherents began to meet for Sunday worship. They were sometimes called Biddellians, sometimes Socinians, and sometimes Unitarians.
The inauguration of CUUC's annual Canvas Drive brings to mind the intersection of spirituality and generosity. I think of the composer George Frederick Handel, whose masterpiece, Messiah, was written to raise funds for three charities: Prisoners' Debt Relief, the Mercer's Hospital, and the Charitable Infirmary. Here is Handel's Gigue from his keyboard suite in G major.
These are our times. A much anticipated verdict was handed down in Minneapolis on Tuesday. I share with you words from a statement from our Unitarian Universalist Association. Our hearts go out to George Floyd's family. We mourn as his community mourns and as they look to find some degree of solace in this verdict. The jury sent a clear message that police are not above the law. It is an indictment of the system of policing that allowed Chauvin to murder an unarmed and defenseless man in broad daylight before witnesses. This is a time of national reckoning. Our Unitarian Universalist faith demands that we speak George Floyd's name in remembrance of his life and recognize every Black person who has been harassed, assaulted, or murdered by police. We pray this moment opens the door to a new era in this country, one in which there are always real consequences for police violence and misconduct. We must work in solidarity with the Black leaders and organizers who have long been fighting for accountability and justice. We need a reinvestment in our communities and a shared vision of safety. Policing in this country remains deeply broken. This verdict does not end institutional racism or the long history of lethal over-policing. We need a different system of public safety, one that recognizes the humanity of all people at its foundation. Like so many law enforcement officers before him, Derek Chauvin thought that without consequence, he could keep his knee on the neck of a prone man who was begging for his life. We acknowledge and honor the 12 Minneapolis citizens of the jury who proved him wrong. The culture of law enforcement is so fundamentally dysfunctional that even under intense global scrutiny, police cannot refrain from enacting violence against Black, brown, and indigenous people. During the Chauvin trial, we witnessed several more police assaults and murders of Black people across the country. Daunte Wright was shot and killed after being pulled over. Police in Columbus, Ohio, shot and killed 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant. The natural response to this unceasing assault on Black lives is righteous anger and profound grief. Yet, as protesters nationally continue to demonstrate against police violence, they will likely be met with all too familiar state-sanctioned violence and militarization. The UUA unequivocally supports the right of the people to gather in protest without being subject to repression and violence. Our Unitarian Universalist faith compels us to join all those who are striving to establish true structures of safety, stability, and freedom for all people. Our tradition's principles, including our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, move us to work together to build the anti-oppressive world we imagine, where everyone can be safe and everyone can thrive. Now, the spoken invocation, and then please sing along with the sung invocation. Words of invocation from Alice Berry. Children of the earth and sky, we are nurtured, sustained, given warmth and light from above and below. Supported by Earth's strong, firm crust, we build our homes, till the fields, plant our gardens and orchards. When we turn from self and seek to be aware, we will find holy light in human faces, in blossom, bird song, and sky. Then Earth is truly our home, and we are one with all Earth's creatures, parents of Earth's children yet to be. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from Spirit of Truth. I invite you to sing along with Kim and Georgiana.
Spirit of truth that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth. Give us to hear the rustle of thy garment. Grant us to feel thy shadow near. So may we find the strength to stand face forward, courage to walk toward the dawning day.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. And now we'll hear from our choir.
Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus hodie. Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus hodie, Gaudeamus hodie. Hallelujah, Gaudeamus hodie, Hallelujah, Gaudeamus hodie, Hallelujah, Gaudeamus hodie.
Good morning, everyone. When I was asked to share my testimonial for the Canvas and the reasons why it is so important to support CUUC, the first thing I thought about is the Hope Kitchen Project and the team of volunteers preparing the meals. And as important as that project has been for the greater community, that answer didn't feel sufficient. So I thought about our community, consisting of people from all ages, backgrounds, ability levels, belief systems, genders, perspectives, and all of our differences. I reflected on this beloved community that we share, our common faith, openness, and the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the interconnected web of which we are all a part. I reflected on friendships and many incredible people who are part of this community. And as rich and multi-layered as our community is, it didn't seem sufficient as an answer either. And of course, since this is a testimonial for the Canvas, I paused to myself and I thought, sure, Nicole, CUUC is special to you, But why should the CUUC community support CUUC financially and at this time? And I thought of several things I know related to money, like put your money where your mouth is, and money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. I thought about stories from the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim traditions related to wealth, sharing, community, and then it all kind of came together and clicked for me. At CUUC, we are a community of people that in our diversity value spirituality and justice, but we're also a very practical people who put our money where our mouth is, with sometimes very lofty beliefs. But at our core, we are people of action. We show this in many ways, with many areas of focus and many diverse goals. And at our best, we are unstoppable. We act when it is easy and when the tide is in our favor, sure. But the actions of this community have shown that we also do it when it is difficult and even a little scary. That as a community, we stick with our values and serve our community even in the darkest of days. Our work with Hope Kitchen has only been one example. I have been so incredibly humbled and touched by those in our community who stepped up to support our greater community with incredible quantities of food. It is thanks to a team of volunteers from our community, the CUUC community, who do the work because they believe in it. Volunteers who do work because they believe in it, not to be seen by others, but because it is their heart's desire to serve others. This is but a snapshot of who we are, because I know there are many of you in this congregation doing sometimes difficult work within our and beyond our community because you believe in it. Thanks to you, the CUUC community, and your generous support, people who otherwise may have gone hungry received a nutritious, high-quality meal, sourced, prepared, and financially supported by you, our faith community, who makes this possible for the entire duration of the coronavirus pandemic thus far. And finally, working with Hope Cooking Team has also shown me how we can do so much more when we work together. We've been able to provide these meals for approximately $1 per person. It just goes to show that when we share in community, goes a lot farther than if we go at it alone. Thank you all for supporting this faith community that I am so proud to be a part of.
Our story this morning is Sustaining the Tree of Life by Lynn Gardner. The pictures will be familiar. The story and images remind us that we are the keepers of our tree. We are the sustainers of our community. We are the caretakers of a vision that comes from us and will live beyond us. What we do here and now matters for the life of our planet and for the vibrancy of this community that we nurture. The community that thrives within our walls, and now we know, if we ever doubted, that it thrives well beyond our walls. Our roots are as strong and deep as we plant them, and our branches spread as far as our vision leads us. The slide reads, Sustaining the Tree of Life by Lynn Gardner. Photos were taken on our beautiful grounds yesterday, April 24th, plus 2 photos from the archives. The tree stood in the middle of the village. Its trunk was so large that it took 6 people holding hands to reach around it. The roots were strong and wide, and its branches spread out over the village square, offering shelter from the rain or shade from the summer sun. Its fruit was juicy, sweet, and plentiful. The people of the village loved the tree. Children played beneath it and climbed to its lowest branches. Young people knew that if you whispered your dreams to the tree, they were more likely to come true. People who proclaimed their love or friendship for one another beneath the branches found their relationships to be nourishing, and elders discovered that their sweetest memories could be counted on when they were near the great tree. The tree had been witness to so much, and when the breezes blew through the leaves, One could hear the echoes of generations, laughter, conversations, dreams, prayers, and songs. Animals loved the tree too. Rabbits lived in the burrows under the roots, squirrels and monkeys lived in the branches, and bats and birds flew in to eat the abundant fruit. The tree seemed to buzz with life. One day, a traveling merchant arrived in the village. He rested in the shade and ate 2 pieces of the delicious fruit. "This fruit is incredible," he said. "I would like to have some to sell in the next village I visit. Who owns this tree?" "No one owns this tree," replied a villager. "If anything, we belong to it." "Well then, if no one owns this tree, then no one will mind if I pick the fruit," said the merchant, and began to fill a basket. "I mind," said the villager, "and today I am keeper of the tree." "What do you mean, keeper of the tree?" "We each take our turns being here with the tree. We could never own it. We are here as protectors and sustainers." "That's ridiculous. This tree doesn't need you. You could just take what you need and take what you want. The tree will continue." But the villager couldn't be persuaded. "Sir, this tree isn't like that. We don't come here to take from it, even though we receive much. We are the keepers of the tree. This is where we are nourished. This is where some of our most precious memories are, and where our people have dreamed. This is where we remember who we want to become." "Well," said the merchant, "you may think that this tree is very special, but it still doesn't need you to sit with it. That's preposterous." "Ah," replied the villager, "this tree itself may not need me, but what of others who come by? Just this morning I sat with a woman whose heart was heavy with worry. Had I not been here, she would have had to carry that weight alone. And this afternoon a couple came by and they rested with me. They said they had been looking for a place like this. And then an elder came by and we watched the bird and the birds in the branches together. And now you are here. You were confused about what this tree is and how to be with it. Imagine if you had arrived and not found anyone here to talk with. You might have continued thinking that everything you do is all about you. Lucky for you, my friend, I'm here to let you know that when you care for the tree of life, it becomes about so much more than just you. And the merchant sat for a while in the shade, thinking about these ideas that felt new and a little challenging. As the sun went down, he picked up his bag and headed out of town, whistling a song he hadn't thought of in years. On his way home, he shared a smile with each person he met, his heart feeling strangely light and joyful. And the people of the village, they continued to sustain the tree of life, to care for one another, and to share their gifts with grace and gratitude. May it be so for each of us.
In prayer, we take a moment to solemnly remind ourselves of our purposes and our gratitude, that they may guide and affirm our actions and our being. Will you then pray with me? Dear reality, in which we stand in a relation of inescapable accountability, the words of the 8th century BCE prophet Amos resound through the centuries and in our souls. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Let justice roll down like waters. Let it cleanse the wounds inequity inflicts. Let kindness and respect, like an ever-flowing stream, quench our thirst for beloved community, and let us be steadfast in our resolve to make it so. Let us stand in gratitude and awe before the wonder of trees, stars, mountains, oceans, and all the creatures that walk upon the ground, swim in the waters, wiggle in the earth, and fly in the air. From gratitude for the sacred beauty in which we are immersed, let us orient every day toward halting our planet's desecration and restoring what has been desecrated. Let us live simply, that others may simply live. Let us live more simply than we have until sustainability and equality is afforded to all. We recognize what a long and deep wound is inflicted on us by social systems that separate being from actions and tell one group of people that their being doesn't matter and tells another group that their actions don't matter. They are insulated from accountability, whatever they do. We are grateful today for something that didn't happen this week because we were afraid it would. We were afraid that yet another verdict in our judicial system would declare that Black lives don't matter and that police officer actions don't matter. We are grateful that this time that didn't happen. Derek Chauvin was convicted of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter for killing George Floyd on May 25th, 2020. And as the Wednesday morning New York Times reported, outside the Cup Food convenience store where George Floyd was killed last May, a woman nearly collapsed in tears upon hearing the guilty verdicts against Derek Chauvin. "We matter," she said, straightening up. "We matter." We have far to go to arrive at beloved community where no one's life is disregarded and no one's actions that cause harm are disregarded. So we are grateful when a step on that path is taken. We pray to continue the work of making justice roll down everywhere. We pray also for our siblings in India, running out of COVID vaccines as they battle a devastating surge in the disease. And our siblings in Chad, embroiled in civil conflict as they grope for a path toward peace. We ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, and to heal what is broken. For all that has been spoken, and for everything that we carry in our hearts silently this morning, let's observe a moment of silence.
Calling all you hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
Federico Monpo's fifth Canción y Danza is a musical representation of our congregational aspiration to emerge from our current times of incertitude and sorrow into a period of hope, growth, and strength.
This week's slogan is use your will. When we say will, we don't mean what's called willpower, sticking doggedly, joylessly to an exercise regimen or a diet entirely for the sake of an outcome. That kind of self-control takes more than telling yourself a slogan. What a slogan can help with is simply keeping in mind what your highest purposes are, your context of commitment. Use your will means remember your intention. Think of a mother devoted to the care of her family. We generally don't describe that as being about willpower, but it is a matter of commitment. Will is giving yourself over to your highest purposes, which lift you and carry you along. This kind of will feels like being pulled by inspiration rather than pushed by stubbornness. Use your will is a slogan reminder to nudge us toward being ardent, resolute, diligent, and mindful. Ardent means wholehearted, enthusiastic, and eager. Let yourself be heartfelt and passionate about your purpose. Resolute means unwavering. Get in touch with your resolve each morning. Surrender to it and let it guide you through the day. Diligent means conscientious and thorough. Don't expect to pull it off with willpower alone. Find the structures, routines, and allies that help you keep going. A person can be both lighthearted and strong-willed. Take pleasure in the strength in your will and the fruits it brings you. Make a list of your highest purposes. Start each day by remembering them and by identifying some small, doable actions you can do that day that reflect your highest purpose.
For more on Use Your Will, see the post at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian. I invite you now to join in with the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse in Moscow, Idaho, our hymn number 67, We Sing Now Together.
We sing now together our songs of thanksgiving, rejoicing in goods which the ages have wrought, for life that enfolds us and helps and heals and holds us and leads beyond the goals which are for theirs once sought. We sing of the freedoms which martyrs and heroes have won by their labor immortal their days and their years. We sing of community now in the making, in every far continent, region and land, with those of all races, all times and names and places. We pledge ourselves in covenant firmly to stand.
Gaudiamos hodie. Let us rejoice today, for we are alive and we are together and we are embodying the good life. The good life. In the 320-year history of Yale University, no class has been as popular as Psych 157, Psychology and the Good Life. It's taught by Professor Laurie Santos. It was offered in 2018, and 1,200 students enrolled for the lecture course. That's a large class. As a former professor myself, my first thought was, that's a lot of papers to grade. Fortunately, Dr. Santos had 24 teaching assistants for the class. That 2018 class was the only time it was offered in person. Coursera made a 10-week version of the course available to the public, attracting hundreds of thousands of online learners, and then came the lockdown of March 2020, and enrollment really took off. So far, says Coursera, 3.3 million people have enrolled for the class. The class asks students to, among other things, track their sleep patterns, keep a gratitude journal, perform random acts of kindness, and take notes of whether over time these behaviors correlate with a positive change in their general mood. The class mentions a study in which 632 Americans were asked to predict how happy they would be if they were given $5 to spend on themselves versus getting $5 and being told they must spend it on someone else. In the study, people predicted that they would be happier if they were allowed to keep the money. But participants consistently reported afterward that they had in fact derived more satisfaction from spending money on someone else. I was surprised. I was surprised that people predicted they would be happier keeping the money. I think most of you probably understand yourselves better than that. You have a better grasp on what's conducive to joy, and the fact that giving to others makes you feel good is well known to you. One student, inspired by the class, decided to try a practical experiment. Instead of keeping an expensive dress she had bought, she gave it to her sister. I'm still feeling that happiness months later, she said. No surprise there. Generosity, gratitude, and sleep. Yale undergraduates, and maybe many of the 3.3 million who took the online class, benefited from being disabused of the notion that high grades, prestigious internships, and good-paying jobs, or making law review, had any relationship to happiness. But most of you, I expect, know those things have little correlation with well-being. Sleep, help others, gratitude. There you have it. A full life, a life of well-being, a life that lets joy in. Congregational life provides the framework for developing gratitude and generously helping others. It might also ease anxiety so you can get more sleep at night, but I don't know so much about that one. We help each other become more generous people, which enhances and deepens our happiness and well-being. The generous spirit that pervades many congregations, including this one, gives us much to be grateful for. fueling a positive feedback loop of generosity to gratitude to more generosity to more gratitude. We yearn for beloved community that will love us into the fullness of our being, a community that will show us how and provide opportunities to love others into their being. Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place, wrote Zora Neale Hurston. Unitarian Universalist congregations have loved me into being, from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Auburn, Alabama, when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, to the UU Congregation of Atlanta from 4th grade through high school, the UU Fellowship of Waco, Texas, when I was a young adult graduate student, in the congregation that is now called Unitarian Universalists of Charlottesville, Virginia, and then the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville, Tennessee. These places shined a light straight into me that dispelled a little boy's nihilism and despair, and then a teenager's, and then a young adult's, and then an adult's, over and over, because dark nights of the soul have a way of recurring. Moments when it all seems meaningless have a way of recurring for beings like us, composed, as W.H. Auden put it, of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair. I came to these places, Unitarian Universalist congregations, for two opposite reasons: the comfort of people like me and the delight of people not like me. Through and with those like me, which really has been everybody, and those not like me, which really has been everybody, I have loved and been loved into being, into my voice, into my place in this world. My guess is you probably have stories like this, stories of how the values, the theology you found here, the music, the work, the camaraderie and friendship, maybe even helped along by some of the preaching you found here, changed you, grew your heart, helped your soul crawl out from its hiding place. And then I began serving our congregations in a professional capacity. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clarksville, Tennessee, the Unitarian Universalist Community of El Paso, the Unitarian Church of Midland, Texas, the UU Fellowship of Gainesville, Florida, and for the last 8 years, Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains, where I have spent more Sunday mornings now than any of those other places. You are such wonderful people. I am so glad to be among you. A people, as Nicole put it, rich and multi-layered. People of action, at our best unstoppable, guided by our heart's desire to serve others. Ours has never been a faith that was about individual spiritual growth. I will have more to say about that, but for now, let's pause and take in a moment with Adam and Beethoven.
In sonatas, composers develop themes through contrast, changing keys, and ultimately transfigured return. Here in Beethoven's first piano sonata, the sense of return echoes our hopes at CUUC to build back with greater strength, vigor, and resolve.
faith has never been about individual spiritual growth. Salvation, we know, having heard it in Unitarian Universalist theology and having learned it from each other, is collective, not individual. Ain't nobody saved until we all saved. Ain't nobody free until we all free. Because there ain't nobody apart from everybody. One example of what Unitarian Universalist faith accomplishes in this world was last year's nationwide effort among Unitarian Universalists called UU the Vote. We built voter engagement, voter registration, voter turnout. It was more than our denomination had ever tackled before, and it was massive and it was awesome. Folks were ready to give generously of their time and resources because our values of justice, compassion, and democratic process and people's lives were on the line and on the ballot. We UUs invested dozens, maybe hundreds of thousands of hours and over $1 million to vote love over division in last November's election. The campaign reached over 3 million potential voters. We UUs were likely the largest, most organized, faith-based pro-democracy effort of 2020. One example from here at Community Unitarian Universalist is our Hope Kitchen project, as you heard from Nicole. We continue week after week to bring the power of imagination, generosity, commitment, and collective action to meet a vital need. Receiving inspiration and spiritual sustenance and giving of our energies for justice and compassion for others are not two different things. Those who think of spirituality as individual, as distinct from embodying compassion and justice for others, will never have the inspiration, the spiritual sustenance, the joy from tending to where there is hurt. Spirituality without actively caring for others is thin and wan. Caring for others that isn't caring for all others is a constrained and limited joy. Caring for all others that isn't actively engaged in building the structures of equality, respect, and fairness fails to be spiritually satisfying. Spirituality without activism isn't spirituality, but only a self-centered embryo of what it could grow into. Activism without spirituality isn't activism, but only noise and ego projection. To build peace within, build justice without. And to build justice without, build peace within. It's another, or maybe the same, positive feedback loop as gratitude and generosity. That's the Unitarian theology that brings joy and healing to ourselves and to our world. That's the Unitarian Universalist vibrancy, the hope, the vigor, and the strength that grows our souls and that our world so needs. As we find ourselves loved into being, we work together to love our world into the fullness of its being. Isabel Wilkerson, author of The Warmth of Other Sun and Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, recounts a conversation she had with the scholar Gary Michael Tartikoff. This is a civilization searching for its humanity, Tartikoff told Wilkerson. It dehumanized others to build its civilization. Now it needs to find its own. And how do we do that? How do we, as a civilization, come finally into our humanity? How does a whole country come into the fullness of its being? Love. As you and I are loved into being by love around us, a nation may be loved into being by love within it. Dr. Martin Luther King spoke often of love, meaning not a fond sentimentality or romantic attachment, nothing precious or maudlin or fey. Love, he said, means understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill, even for one's enemies. Dr. King told us love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. And again, he said, at the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. And he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. He believed, he said, that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. And that is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. He said, this is the love that may well be the salvation of our civilization. And thus, he saw and reminded us, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? There is no joy in retreating from reality, withdrawing, turning away from the systems that do harm. And the founding and foundation of our country are forces of domination. Forces that said people identified as Black, as Indigenous, as people of color didn't matter. It was and is a system of double exclusion. For the people identified as white have also been excluded from responsibility and accountability, which are as necessary to beloved community as respect and justice are. There is no joy in blithe aloofness from reality. We fool ourselves if we think that paying attention will only make us feel bad, just as we fool ourselves if we think keeping $5 will make us happier than spending it on someone else. All the joy there is comes through compassion, from orienting toward the hurt and engaging in the healing. This Unitarian Universalist congregation isn't the only community with this power that loves you into being and helps heal our world. I don't claim ours is the only beloved community, only that it is ours. This building that we long to gather in again, this place of music and song, friendship and support, inspiration and encouragement happens to be our place. And it's not a static place, but a path we walk together, stepping where we could not step alone, stepping into a greater hope and vigor and strength. Unitarian Universalist President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray said in a message that she had for us this week, when we give boldly, generously, audaciously of our financial resources as we are able, we make our values and our ministry manifest in the world. When we give generously of our hearts and our care and our love to our children and families, elders and adults, young adults and youth, we change lives. We save lives. And when we dream big as leaders and staff about the impact we are called to make in the wider world, lives are changed. The material conditions of our communities can change, and we are changed. Progressively loved and loving into being. May it be so, and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Meredith. Now, please sing along with the Wesley Church Choir from Concord, New Hampshire, our hymn number 404, What Gift Can We Bring?
Rain
safe, be well. And now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. Our chalice extinguished, the flame of conscience and the light of the democratic method are now ours to carry forth.
By the light of our promise to affirm and promote,
Democracy and the right of conscience,
by the flame of our individual lights,
and by the wisdom and compassion we find and make only together.
thus may we find our way.
go in peace.
If you've got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some other folks might be a little smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
Like the lion in Camille Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals, let's come roaring back at CUUC.